Hello, 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 and welcome to your Source Elder Financial Safety Center's Employment Services presentation of Mastering the Virtual Interview. I'm Christina Taylor, Senior Career Coach with the Senior Source Elder Financial Safety Center, and I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our presenter today. But first, I want to just say to anyone who is looking today, thank you so much for joining us. The weather we know across DFW is pretty interesting. We got snow, but we're hopeful that each of you are inside of your warm homes and that you are doing well. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and move into presenting or introducing our presenter. We have today with us Katrina Strohl. She is the CEO of Fill Your Cup Career Services. A little bit about Katrina. She is a certified career coach, Navy veteran, and volunteer human resources business partner for MVA, which stands for the Minority Veterans of America. We're very happy to have you here with us today, Katrina. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me today. And I cannot wait to dive into our topic today.
Wonderful. It's an extraordinary topic. But before we dive into that, Katrina, give us a little more detail about you and about the service that you offer.
Oh, no problem. So like Christina said, I am the CEO and founder of Fill Your Cup Career Services. And I developed these services in order to give people a place where they can go. When I transitioned out of the military, I could not find any resources available to me, readily available, especially to someone who is a woman of color and a veteran. And so I'm just trying to be that resource for people out there.
Wonderful. Well, we again are very happy to have you. And this is a very important topic that we're talking about, right? Mastering the virtual interview. If anyone is familiar with the way society is set up now, especially in the wake of the global pandemic, everything now is virtual. So we have to be prepared to walk into that space. Do you see that happening a lot more, Katrina, now that, of course, the pandemic is here, that's really kind of a way that people are operating or businesses are operating?
Definitely. And even though our numbers are dwindling in the deaths and the even cases in COVID, I foresee several employers continuing this remote environment as is.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that you're going to give our viewers today some extraordinary tools and resources to use so that they're able to master the virtual interview. Just a reminder, everyone, feel free to ask questions, post questions if there are things that you would like Katrina to talk about specifically during or after the presentation. I will be monitoring the chat, and we are here for you. Katrina, I'm going to turn it over to you. We're excited to see what you have for us today.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen with you all. And we are going to get started. So like she said, we're going to be talking about mastering the virtual interview today. I'm Katrina Strohl, certified career coach and HR consultant from Fill Your Cup Career Services, and I cannot wait to share some of the tips I have for you today. So let's start with the number one fact that we just discussed. Virtual interviews are inevitable. There's no way around it. They're not going anywhere. So if you thought, oh, you know what, I'll just wait this wave out and I won't really dive into what I need to know about it, I'm sorry, they're not going anywhere. You need to learn this stuff. 1 in 4 Americans will be working remotely in 2021. This is a fact. We are already almost into March, the 3rd month of 2021. And as you can see, we're doing video chats, we're doing video training. This is continuing on and it's not slowing down. Of 669 CEOs, 78% agree that remote collaboration is here to stay for long term. So even if we start to transition back into office spaces or corporate buildings or what have you, at least half of those personnel are going to stay at home, just because CEOs are starting to realize this is great for our people, for our personnel. It helps them out. By 2025, an estimated 70% of the workforce will be working remotely at least 5 days a month, which means moving forward, CEOs are going to become more flexible and allow for people, including hiring managers, to work from home. What this means for us moving forward, job seekers, or even people who are just practicing their skills to get back out there into the job search, is we need to know the required equipment. And the required equipment for virtual interviews is simply a microphone and a camera. That microphone and the camera can be attached to anything, a laptop, a cell phone, a tablet. Of course, make sure you're in a remote space, but we'll dive more into that as we go along.
Wonderful.
So software, there are tons of different softwares out there for virtual interviewing. They've even developed several different types as this pandemic has gone along, because people are realizing this train is not slowing down. We need to develop software needed for this need, and they're here to supply it. So the top 5 we have here are Google Meet, GoToMeeting, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and Ring Central. These are the top 5 that employers are using currently for virtual interviewing. There's also a subsection to that, recorded interviews, which are provided by SparkHire and RedView. Those are least common though, so you don't really have to worry about that. It may be something you would want to practice on, but we'll get to the practice section soon. Preparation. So as we know, preparing for any interview is hectic and chaotic, but we always have the main objectives listed that we need to practice. We need to make sure we have our elevator speech. We know exactly what we want to say when we go up to that person. They say, hey, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? That's what our elevator speech is. We need to make sure we're reviewing the job description so we know exactly what we're getting into. We need to make sure we know the scheduled time. We need to make sure we're researching the organization we're interviewing for. And we need to practice. These are preparation steps that have not changed throughout the interview process and won't change for virtual interviews.
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask you about that a little more in detail. And I think we have a screen up about the elevator pitch particularly. I know we have a lot of people that are always a little, concerned about what that looks like, but I'll let you continue. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. So these top things are things that are in common in in-person interviews and virtual interviews. Those are the things that aren't changing. But what we're here to talk about today are the differences between in-person and virtual, because we want to be masters of them. So in person, of course, you'd have to calculate your driving time. You need to worry about parking. You need to make sure when you go up to the receptionist and they say, who are you here to see? Oh no, who am I here to see? Is it Bob, Dave, Deborah? Make sure you know. Sometimes some people prepare by bringing in a printed resume. That's what you'd have to wear. And you'd have to worry about sweating in an in-person interview. And the bathroom, where bathrooms are located, emergency exits, all of the above. So with virtual interview, of course, we've already talked about the software. That's one thing you'd have to worry about. But here's a list of differences from in-person to virtual. Equipment, we've talked about the required equipment, which is a microphone and a camera, and we do not discriminate against what it's attached to, so don't worry about that. You need to make sure if you're going into a virtual interview, you have a quiet and remote place where you're not going to have any distractions. Small talk. So in an in-person interview, when I walk into the room, I'll say, hi, Christina, how are you today? Wow, I love your shirt. This is amazing. We're having such great weather. In a virtual interview, it's much more difficult to kind of wedge that small talk in, just because you and the other person on the other side of the camera know what you're there to do, and you're trying to reach that objective. So that small talk is really important because it'll help you stand out to the employer. Oh, wow, they didn't only just answer the questions, they also made a little small talk, which they know is difficult to do.
Absolutely.
And then documentation. Unlike in an in-person interview, when you bring in your printed resume, and that may be the only documentation you have with you to prepare, for a virtual interview, you can have any type of documentation you want available to you because they can't see you beyond the box that you're in. So you could have your resume, you could have your printed job description here, you could have references available to you, you could have anything you want because they can't see outside of this box. Did you have any questions, Christina?
No, it doesn't look like we have any. One thing I was going to ask you, which I think is awesome, is to kind of give us an idea or pitch to us what your ideal elevator speech would be.
Oh, no problem. So with most resumes that you're typing up, that professional summary at the top is kind of your baseline for your elevator speech. It's what you want to project in 30 seconds, maybe 45. I'll give you 45, describing yourself to a potential employer. So, hi, my name is Katrina. I'm an HR business partner, a certified career coach, and an HR consultant. I would love to be a part of your organization, and I would love to talk to you more about the leadership skills that I could bring to your team.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That was good. That was great. That was great. And I would imagine, in a virtual setting, the same rules apply as far as, when you're pitching the speech, that you want your tone, your voice, the confidence that you feel in what you're saying to resonate. Any tips on how to remain confident as you're pitching the speech, and any, kind of feedback on maybe how not to be uncomfortable doing that regularly?
Definitely. And so with confidence, that comes with practice. Practice, practice, practice. And we'll dive more into that. But especially with virtual interviews, like I said, you know that you're there for an objective, and it's really hard to kind of show your charismatic nature because you're not in person. So you just have to practice being on camera.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Katrina.
No problem. And like we talked about documentation, you can also have notes available because they can't see you outside of the box. Mm-hmm. So for my next slide, I just want to talk about things to avoid during a virtual interview and things that you can do during a virtual interview. So let's start with avoidances. Distractions. I know we've already talked about that quiet place in that remote location, but we also want to talk about distractions that may occur in that quiet place. I myself have a 2-year-old son, and if I don't close the door all the way, he will burst into a meeting. And for a lot of people, that is the norm now. We don't have a lot of places to go, but we need to make sure our distractions are at least away for the time being. Or try. Okay, oversharing. So during a virtual interview, we know that, once again, we are there with an objective. And although we're trying to get that small talk, we're trying to get personal during the virtual interview, oftentimes it becomes second nature for people to overshare. And I think it's just because you're on camera and you feel very comfortable with being able to see yourself and their reactions. Right. But we want to try to avoid that as much as possible and stay on track with what we're trying to do. Technical difficulties. This, again, comes with practice and being comfortable on camera. When you have your camera and your microphone set up on whatever device you're using, make sure you have good connection, make sure you have good lighting, make sure you don't have any, I'll use myself as an example. I have Buzz Lightyear stickers on my wall behind me. But for a virtual interview, I lower my screen and make sure I'm appropriate, and all you can see is the background. There are also backgrounds that you can use on several different softwares, but we'll get into that. Inappropriate background. So like I said before, my Jessie stickers and my Buzz Lightyear stickers, although you might find them appealing, I'm sure a potential employer might find it inappropriate. I've also seen people on Zoom meetings, they have bottles of alcohol behind them, or they have pictures of ladies on the wall. Try to avoid that as much as possible and try to keep a neutral background.
Okay.
Things to commit to during a virtual interview. Nonverbal communication. Like I stated several times before, virtual interviews become very difficult to be personable and kind of communicate outside of the objective. With that small talk, you want to be as communicative as as possible through nonverbal communication. Do a lot of smiling, a lot of head nodding. As you can see, I use my hands to talk, and it just shows how enthusiastic and passionate you are in trying to become a part of that organization.
Yeah. And Katrina, I'll tell you, just from my experience, having conducted interviews, I can tell you the one thing that will easily distract an interviewer or a recruiter or a manager is if you're distracted and what your nonverbal is doing, right? Mm-hmm. So don't do this. Don't do that. This is my favorite. Again, don't do that. Nonverbal says a lot too, and kind of working your face and your facial gestures and such. So yeah, I just wanted to add that little part on. It's super important. Thank you so much.
And once again, that comes with practice, seeing yourself on the screen and knowing, oh, I talk with my hands. I had no idea. But on screen, you can see everything.
Right.
Manners and professionalism. Once again, because you're here on an objective, it kind of becomes difficult to keep your manners in check and to remain professional throughout the virtual interview. But please remember to keep them in check. Engagement. That goes into the manners, the nonverbal communication. You need to remain engaged in the conversation, especially if you're on a panel interview virtually. It kind of becomes difficult to follow where the conversation is going, but try to remain engaged in where you are. Lastly, you want to commit to showcasing your experience. So for virtual interviews, it becomes, once again, very objective, and they have a list of what questions they need to ask you. Sometimes they try not to stray away from the list just because of how objective they are in the interview. So make sure when they say, do you have any other questions? Do you have anything else you want to add? You are showcasing your experience. All right. Practice. So we know a lot of practice questions, right? What are you passionate about? What can you tell me about yourself? Could you share one time you made a mistake? How would your colleagues describe you? In person, there's kind of a pause. They kind of they can see that you're thinking, they can see that you're worried, they can see you're fidgeting, and they say, don't worry, have a glass of water. Take time to think about it. On virtual interviews, there is no glass of water. There is no time to really think about it. Again, they're there with an objective and they're trying to get through it, which is why practice is so important. I know by now you're probably thinking, Katrina, you have said practice at least 50 times in this presentation. How am I going to practice a virtual interview? Don't worry, I will tell you.
Yes.
So out of all the softwares that we talked about before, Google Meet, which was previously Google Hangout, is free. All you need is a Gmail account. In order to go to Google Meet, all you need to do is go to the Google page, go to these, how many dots is that? 9 dots in the corner next to your avatar. There we go, those 9 dots. And then a camera will be there that says Meet. You can click that Meet camera and it will say join or start a meeting. From here, If you click join or start a meeting, you can start a virtual meeting with anybody. You can type in my name, you can type in Christina's name, and invite us to the meeting. And we can practice with you. That way you're practicing with somebody you feel comfortable with, but you're still doing it virtually. And that's the practice that's needed.
Awesome. And Katrina, you said this is absolutely free. Is that right?
Yes, which is why I try to encourage people to use it. See, it will ask you the name of the meeting. I just typed in VDG. I click join now. It will say, do you want to add anyone? I'll click Christina. And then me and Christina can have a little conversation and talk about what we need to talk about. Ask practice questions. Say, hey, can you hear me? Is my microphone and my camera working? All of the above, so you are prepared for that virtual interview.
Nice.
Absolutely free. Okay. And lastly, ending the interview. So as you can see at my background picture, that man is shaking hands. And of course, they're probably having small talk. And they're saying, I cannot wait to see you again. Thank you so much for your time. All that jazz. In a virtual interview, you do not have that opportunity. It's, in fact, it's kind of awkward to end a virtual interview. It'll just be, okay, those were all my questions. Do you have any questions? When you say, I don't have any questions, or I would suggest you ask questions about benefits, culture, expectations, direct leadership, and next steps. These are all questions that would usually be filled in with that handshake or the end of the meeting goodbye or send off. But because you're not having that, because we're going through virtual, it's hard to do. So make sure when they ask, do you have any questions or do you have anything you want to add? You're still asking the questions that for information that probably would have been provided in person.
Very good.
So let's review. What's the required equipment? Anybody? No.
Anyone know? Does anyone know the required equipment? I'm going to write it in. If you can answer this question, answer it for us. All right, we'll give them a minute or so.
Oh, that's so cool. Yay, Jennifer Jackson.
Oh, wonderful. My computer. Awesome, Jennifer. You're absolutely correct.
Absolutely right. So you need a microphone and a camera. And of course, a computer would be great to have those two things on. So great job. Know your software. I know we listed a bunch of software. Does anybody know the software that we talked about that's free and you can use to practice?
All right. Going once. Going twice. Going twice. And you're on, Katrina.
Okay, it was Google Meet, and you can find that simply by going. Oh, thanks, Jennifer. You can find
in here.
Yeah, you can find that simply by going to the Google homepage and clicking those 9 dots, and Google Meet will be there for you, and you can practice anytime you like. So some of the differences we went over today. That was. Now you don't have to worry about the parking lot. You don't have to worry about parking. You can now have any type of documentation you want around your screen as long as your potential employer doesn't see it. And we need to make sure that we're emphasizing our nonverbal communication and still engaged in the conversation, although it's virtual. And then practice. Practice, practice, practice. I think I am up to 100 times in this presentation alone of saying practice, but it is very important. This is territory that we have not seen before, and we've not had to travel into, And although this is unknown territory, it's going to continue to remain. It's not going anywhere. Those facts that we talked about earlier is probably going to continue for the rest of 2021. So please practice and please be prepared. Once again, I am Katrina Strohl, CEO and founder of Fill Your Cup Career Services. Thank you so much for having me today.
Wonderful.
Have any questions?
All right. Now is the time. If you all have questions for Katrina regarding mastering the virtual interview, feel free to put those in the chat for us right now. Katrina, I think you've already kind of put the thing up on the screen, but can you give us a little more detail about Fill Your Cup Career Services for those who may be interested?
Oh, no problem. So I offer career services through a 6-week program, but I also have individual coaching sessions that are by donation. And the reason they're by donation is because I am doing this in order to fill your cup so you can move forward to the next step. It's the whole reason I'm doing it. And I hope I do.
Awesome. That's awesome, awesome, awesome. All right. Well, unless there aren't any other questions, we want to thank you so much, Katrina, for joining us. For those of you who are not as familiar with the Senior Source Elder Financial Safety Center, we do provide great resources for 50 of individuals and older adults in helping them in the areas of finance, fraud prevention and scam prevention, but we also have a special and a very special and unique interest in helping and preparing older adults for employment, whether that's encore careers, whether it's the second career or part-time. Do all those opportunities for you in the form of computer skills, computer sessions that we're all doing virtually, wonderful programming like what we've done today, offering up this really good stuff for you. If you have any additional questions, I think Katrina has given her information. Katrina, how can they reach you again, either by email or phone, or how does this work? How can they get in touch with you?
So I would suggest, if you need me for anything, visiting my website, which is www.fillyourcupcareerservices.com. All of my contact information is available to you through my website.
Wonderful. Now, we did have one quick question. We've got about 3 minutes here. Jennifer D. Jackson asked, when we submit a resume online, why is it necessary to bring one? You submit a resume online, Jennifer, are you asking why is it necessary to bring a resume into the interview? I believe that is the question.
Okay. Whether in person or virtual, you always want to make sure you have a copy of your resume to ensure that they have the most updated copy, one, and to make sure that you know what's on your resume when they ask you questions. I've tailored several people's resumes for several positions, and you just want to make sure you have the specific resume for that position so you can answer the questions as best as possible.
Wonderful. Great, great, great. All right. Are there any other questions? Questions for Katrina today? All right. Again, Katrina, we thank you so much for joining us, the Senior Source for EFSC's Employment Services Mastering the Virtual Interview. It was a great time with you. Again, anyone that's joining us today, you can look down at the bottom of your ticker tape and you can identify a phone number. You can contact us for complimentary coaching, whether it's employment, financial services, or whatnot. We will be available to you. Wanted to also share with you before we go some upcoming programs. As you know, the Senior Source offers a great opportunity in partnerships with various employers. And we have an employer coming up that will be visiting with us on the 25th of this month. And they are I think this right. It's the Albertson stores that will be here with us. But if you have any more interest in that, I'll be sure to share that at another time, because I can't do that. Anyway, have a great rest of the day. Be safe, be warm. Master your virtual interviews take hold of your future. We're very glad that you joined us. Have a great rest of the day. Katrina, thanks for joining us.